Hello, explorers, and welcome to Reach the World's Explorer program. For more than 25 years, Reach the World has sparked student curiosity, bringing real-world adventure, fresh perspectives, and career pathways into K-12 classrooms through virtual exchange. My name is Tim, and today we're reconnecting live with wildlife photographer and National Geographic Explorer George McKenzie Jr., who's joining us to talk a bit about his film, The Book of George, and more about his work in the amazing North Everglades of Florida. Question for you, student followers. Have you read George's latest virtual exchange articles? If you have, wonderful. We'll touch on them today. And if you haven't quite gotten to them yet, I've added a link to his Reach the World homepage in the chat. Make sure you check them out. This week and next week, we've got more articles coming from George to wrap up his virtual exchange. For our classrooms and students joining on camera or via YouTube today, please be thinking about your questions for George as we go. If you're feeling brave and want to ask him a question, you will definitely have the opportunity. I know many of you have recently watched George's film, so now's your chance to connect directly with the star of the film and ask him what you want to know. So we'll do that today for sure. With that short intro today, let's journey to the Northern Everglades to Florida and welcome wildlife photographer and National Geographic Explorer, George McKenzie Jr. George, welcome back to Reach the World. Great to see you.
Hey, good morning, Tim. How are you? Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's having an awesome Thursday. I know summer break is right around the corner, so let's finish strong. And I'm here for any questions you guys or girls might have.
Fantastic. We have, what better way to spend an hour or 45 minutes today than to talk about the Everglades and the wildlife and all the ways that you capture, the wild things happening in the Everglades. For our students who are joining today, who have not had a chance to watch a snippet of George's film or George's film in its entirety, George created a film called The Book of George, which is fantastic. I cannot recommend it enough. A really wonderful film about his life and his story and how he became a wildlife photographer. And I'm going to start today by sharing a short clip of that. And then we'll talk a little bit more about it. So without sort of further ado, let's watch a 1-minute clip from George's film, The Book of George.
So right now I'm trying to pull in the card from my last camera trap. I probably have over 3,000 images. This is what they don't tell you about camera trapping. So you can't control everything. Yeah. Great shot of the tail. The photo that's honestly gotten me the furthest was a photo of a Florida panther walking through one of my camera traps that I set up on my own. It took me about 394 days to get. The culmination of everything I learned from all my mentors to be able to scout a location, find the tracks, put it in play, and let the animal do what it naturally does. It validated a lot of decisions that I made leading up to this point.
All right, George, we got a little glimpse of your film, a little glimpse of your story. Certainly for me, I love seeing what it looks like to be in the Everglades for someone who does not live in the Everglades. Just a glimpse at what it looks like to go into the field and set your camera traps and create those beautiful images. What was it like for you to create a film about your life? Was that fun? Is it fun to be on the other side of the cameras?
Yes and no. Yes, because I got to experience it from the other side. No, because I had to be so vulnerable and just be very open about my journey and my story. So that part was a little difficult. However, it was a lot of fun just making the movie. So no complaints at all.
Fantastic. So for our students who are watching live, please, if you're watching on YouTube, drop your questions in the chat. I'd love to fold them into our conversation today. You have had a chance to watch George's film, and if you have questions for him, I'll be happy to relate those to George, or you can do it yourself. Either one works for us today. George, you had mentioned about the photo in the clip that we just saw, the photo that took like a year to make. Can you explain how it takes a year to take a photo for us, for those of us who are trying to do the math?
Oh yes, completely. It takes a year because you never know when the animal is going to pass through the camera trap, and a panther typically uses about 250 square miles as its territory. So that's maybe just under the size of the city of Orlando, just to give it some context. And you never know when it's going to pass. And then if everything works, and sometimes nothing works and the animal walks right by. So it's a lot of hit and miss, and just being consistent and persistent. It is what led to that photo. There was a lot of failure leading up to that.
250 square miles, you have to set up your trap in the one place where that animal is going to walk directly in front of it. How do you do that? Like, what signs are you looking for to identify a place that's a great place to set up a camera trap?
I definitely work with a lot of the scientists and the conservationists on properties, private lands, and public lands to gather information about the animal tracks and movements. And I studied the tracks, see how fresh they were, and I install what are generally considered trail cams to monitor the movement patterns. And then that's how I selected an install location. Then I set up and cross my fingers and hope that everything works out.
Are the animals that you are interested in tracking creatures of habit? Do they go down the same paths over and over again in their daily routines?
Yes, because animals they will always choose the path of least resistance. So it's not what you usually see in the movies. They don't crawl out of the bushes. They'll go down a path that has no bushes, so they can see. Number one is be protected and understand their surroundings, and then they can also find food, because where the predators will walk, that's where their food will walk also.
Okay, and do you ever use like bait, for lack of a better word, like food or anything to draw animals to your camera traps?
Oh no. Ethically, it's something that I just don't do, and it's how I was brought up in storytelling, especially wildlife storytelling, because what that does, it dissuades the animal from going to find food. So then they'll just associate wherever you are as a human, and because they have such a heightened sense of smell, they'll associate your smell with food every time, and not everyone wants to have an encounter with a wild animal in the wild. So I might not be the only one out there, and some random person who's just taking a walk, doing something, the animal smell them and just, oh, this person might have food for me, and pop out. And then that's a whole encounter that now the animal control and the wildlife services are involved, and more times than not, the animal then loses its habitat, and it's removed from the habitat that it grew up in. So definitely not something that I do.
Okay, very good. So a couple of our schools that are joining live today are from the New York City area. It's where you grew up. And I think it's really interesting to note that your journey that now involves bears and panthers and mosquitoes, the things that we associate with the Everglades, crocodiles, or, Everglades animals, began with a much more sort of urban wildlife in the form of pigeons and rats. Can you talk a little bit about how, some of these living creatures in urban areas got you interested in documenting wildlife photography or documenting wildlife and got this journey started?
Yeah. So one of the things that happened for me is the fact that I met a wildlife photographer who, at this stage of his career, had seen just about everything and traveled most of the world to tell stories. And he needed to tell a story about the smartest birds in New York City, and those happen to be the pigeon. So it changed my point of view and how I looked at the pigeon, because most kids who are growing up in NYC are usually told that pigeons are just rats with wings, because they're abundant everywhere. There are pigeons and there are European starlings. Those are the two birds that you see predominantly in New York City. And once I had that experience, it changed my opinion of wildlife and how I viewed the wildlife in New York City. And to this day, yeah, they're still my spark species, and I actually have a tattoo of a pigeon on my arm.
Excellent. Great. What is there an equivalent sort of smartest animal of the Everglades? What do you think of as the smartest animal, or the one that you sort of like do mental battle with when it comes to getting them on camera?
I would say it's the bobcat, because they're really triggered by sound. They're very perceptive, and they love urinating on my camera traps because they want to know why this thing is making this noise. So they'll just do a number one on my camera traps to mark it and walk away.
You don't think they're sending you a message like, I know you're here?
More along the lines of, why are you here? You should not be here.
Well, we got a chance last week, or last time we connected with you, to see sort of your environment a little bit, see what one of your camera trap looks like. I want to bring this up just as a review for our students. When we talk about what equipment you're using to capture the wildlife of the Everglades, this is what we're looking at. Will you talk us through what we're looking at just one more time quickly?
Yeah, of course. So what you're seeing, those two blue things are the batteries that power the camera that's sitting in that housing. To the left of in that picture, you'll see what's the brain of this entire housing that triggers the camera, fires the trigger, and everything to make the camera actually click the shutter. So when I'm not there, it'll actually happen. And 1 second, I'll show you. For this class, the other class didn't see. This is what one of my triggers looks like.
All right, so that's the brains.
Yeah.
Excellent. We saw in that short clip of your film that we looked at that this camera, when it detects some motion, seems to just fire out a burst of photos. When you go back to a place where you had left a camera trap and it's been maybe a particularly active zone, how many photos are you looking at when you retrieve that from the field and looking to see if you caught anything?
So what I usually get out of the field is one of these. So this is a memory card, and it'll have about anywhere from 2,500 to about 5,000 images on it. So I have to go through each one individually until I see well-composed, detailed photos of the animal moving, and that's where I go through my culling process to trim it down, and then I make a selection on the ones that I'd like to publish.
All right, excellent. I have some of your final great photos, and I wanted to do this background first so that we're all very well aware that it takes months, years maybe to get these photos, that this isn't, you just walking out and you have a camera memory card full of these photos. These are some of the best, right?
Yes, sir. This is a Florida black bear, and it's in the swamp. And as you can see, One of the things I love about this photo is that you get to see all four of its legs. It's in stride, and it's looking because it's hearing the camera click in the box. So that's why it's looking towards the lens.
All right. And does the black bear live throughout the Everglades, or is it specific to the northern Everglades where you live?
Oh no, it lives throughout the Everglades. So you'll find they have about 5 different Florida black bear populations here in Florida. Very distinct populations.
All right. Got a couple more pictures. I don't know if this is the same bear. It looks like maybe not.
No, this is a older male bear, and this is how a bear lets other bears know that they're looking for a partner. So this is like this tree right here. It's called the rub tree. So this is like the Tinder, Bumble, Hinge of bear dating. So all the bears kind of go by and leave a mark and say, "Hey, I'm available and I'm looking."
I have to presume that you like knew that this tree served that purpose when you set up the trap there. How did you know that that was a tree that a bear was gonna rub on?
So if you are able to zoom in on this photo right above
I
the
can't. I'm
left.
sorry. We'll just
No,
have to
that's
like.
fine. But if they get to see this photo by clicking on my article and reading it, you'll see there are marks there on right above the left ear of the bear, and that's where they scratch and they rub, and they do it for generations. So this bear learned this rubbing on this tree from his mother, and he's going to pass it down to his child. So it's they constantly animals just like us humans, they love patterns. So once you understand the pattern, you can then document it and highlight it.
Mhm. And were you one day sort of walking through and noticed the signs on this tree and were thinking, wow, I got to set something up here, see what happens after I'm gone?
Oh no, so what happens is everything that you see, you have a final picture of in all of my articles. It's all scouted ahead of time. So I go searching for these opportunities, looking for these specific trees, looking for these moments. So that's where it comes to me just spending an inamountable time in the Everglades, just kind of walking around looking for things that just stick out to me, and what most people would walk by that don't go into the Everglades looking for these things.
Excellent. Here's another photo. It looks like similar behavior, but some cubs.
Yes, so as you can see, this is a mom with some young cubs, and this is what I meant. This is what I was referring to in the earlier photo. So these cubs are going to learn from their mom how to go mark and how to look for trees, and she's rubbing, saying, "Hey, I'm looking to date again."
Do you encounter very often in the part of the northern Everglades where you live that these animals that are very wild and living in this amazing wildlife refuge of the Everglades, that they encounter the humans who live around the edges of the Everglades?
Oh yeah, you definitely do, and that's why it's in our best interest to drive with caution going down the highways, because as human expansion happens and we start to encroach more on their habitat, the places that they used to walk and just cut through are now have roads running through them and highways. So it's in our best interest to just drive with caution and be on the lookout for animals on the side of the road so we don't hit or kill them.
When I look at this photo, I see, the mom and her cubs. It's a very heartwarming picture of a bear family, living their best life in the Everglades. What kind of storytelling potential does a photo like this have? Like, what would you, as someone who's interested in wildlife conservation, what kind of impact would you want to have by sharing this photo with people who don't, spend a lot of time in the Everglades or don't know much about the Everglades. What's your hope for these photos?
Well, the story behind me sharing these photos, it just goes to show what we don't see, right? And what lives there naturally, what exists in the shadows, the unseen story per se that you don't get to see about the Everglades, because from a distance it just looks wild and crazy. And there are all these theories that we build up in our heads of things that can happen and stuff like that, yet these animals coexist with us on this earth in spaces that we consider uninhabitable. They live and they thrive, and there's a whole family there that's learning. Oh, the prior generation is teaching the new generation how to survive in this place and coexist with humans.
All right, wonderful. Well, I know we've got some students watching online. If you've got questions for George, drop them in the chat. I'd be happy to fold them into our conversation today. We can go back to George's film, The Book of George, if you have questions about that. Or we're going to keep looking at some more of his photos from the Everglades so that we, many of us who don't live in Florida, can get a better sense of what's living there through George's work. So this was one you mentioned in your film. This was just a beautiful photo of an animal that very, very few people ever get to see, right?
Yes, sir. So the Florida panther, I believe the latest statistic, it's about 205 or less than 200 of them still in the wild. So this is a young panther. So as you look at the color of her skin, and the reason I know it's a female because the females are a lot slimmer than the men, and she's a young panther because you can see those little dark spots because she hasn't fully grown into adulthood yet. And she's walking through one of my camera traps, and one of the first bear picture you showed, this is the exact same spot. At this time, this was at sunset, and when the bear walked through, it looked like it was the middle of the day. So once again, it's just monitoring the traffic of the animals in the path. Like I said earlier in my speech, animals take the path of least resistance. So the same roads that we tend to use as humans in wild spaces and paths, the animal is going to take, because as you can see, there's no reason for her to be worried about anything. She can see her entire path and where she's going.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like she's got some kind of collar on. Is she being tracked or monitored in some way?
Yes, she's being tracked by the Florida Wildlife and Game Commission. So they collar them to just keep track of their movements. So the information of me understanding that they need about 250 square miles as a territory. That's something I get from them. However, they will never tell me exactly where the panther is. They'll be like, hey, panther walks this path. However long it takes for her to come back, you can set up if you want. They keep track so they can understand movement, habitat, and just find out where she is in case something happens to her.
Mm-hmm. And if you capture a photo like this, would you share it with that group? I'm sure they'd be interested to see, this panther, that they know where it is, what it looks like, how it's growing, some of the visual cues you can get from your photos.
Yeah, it's a very collaborative effort. So it's not something that I take and I'm going to hoard for myself or gatekeep. It's something that I definitely do share because they know exactly who this panther is. They can look at it, this is Panther FP 245, and she was born at this time. Last time we saw her was at this location. So all those things come into play, and they're very appreciative of those opportunities to get that information.
Have you ever had a situation where a photo that you captured in your camera traps has shown new light on some sort of research project or some investigation that a different group is doing in the Everglades? That's something you collected was really beneficial to some other effort of a like-minded organization or group in the Everglades?
Well, not particularly my footage. However, I was collaborating with a scientist, and for the first time, he got some footage on video of a black bear eating gator eggs. So
Wow.
bears love gator eggs. It's apparently rich in protein. Go figure. So they'll munch on, if they find a gator nest with some eggs, they'll raid it and eat the eggs.
Wow, very interesting. The last thing I want to say about this photo, just an observation, is that it's amazing for someone who doesn't live in Florida, myself, to think that this panther and a bear are walking the same road, possibly in the same day. You think sometimes about these larger animals as having their own areas that they sort of keep to themselves, but there's a lot of interplay between the wildlife of the Everglades, isn't there? There's a lot of sort of overlap in these areas that you're looking at.
Yes, there totally is. It's overlap for everyone: humans, critters, the plants, the insects. We all share this world, right? So it's indicative of us as the people who have the ability to really impact how these animals exist, for us to be conscious of that and be conscious of our responsibility to the rest of these animals that share this planet with us. Because I'd love for it to be something that, for everyone listening and tuning in, these photos aren't the only things or the only way that you guys get access to nature and to the wild. I'd love for you to be able to go out there and see it and be able to experience it and find the calming effect that nature has on you.
That is great, and you're obviously lucky enough to live sort of in the shadow of a major national park with a lot of really cool things going on. But I think, most students across the U.S. live within an easy drive of a state park, a local park, a natural area where there is wildlife. Whether it's pigeons or bears or something in between that
Yes,
they
sir.
can go out and investigate. What are we looking at here? I think of this as sort of the iconic. This is what I think of when I think of Everglades.
So the Everglades is one of the few, if I'm not mistaken, it's the only place in the world that has gators and crocs, and this is a gator just kind of sunning, hanging out, enjoying. This looks like a young male enjoying his day. And it's one of those things that, believe it or not, my first time seeing a gator in the Everglades in person, it scared me. And
I believe it.
to be years in, and now they're just everywhere. They're really smart. They don't bother humans, and they're actually, yesterday was National Gator Day, believe it or not. So to me, it's the equivalent of having a dinosaur roaming the earth still, because a lot of them, they live for a really long time. They've been around. They've come back from being endangered. And for those of you who don't know, gator can eat one meal every 4 months and still survive.
Wow. That is an interesting fact. Very cool. Do you see gators very often in your work? Some of the camera traps I've noticed, or the photos at least that we've looked at, have been more like dry environments. Do you also do work in sort of the wetter parts of the Everglades?
Oh, yeah. So what you're seeing, those photos are off a road where the gators are always popping up and walking by. So, when I go in to check my camera traps, they'll usually scatter and run back into the water and just hang out and wait for me to leave. But I see them a lot and I see them often, and I am very conscious of their existence. And believe it or not, the baby gators, the little tiny ones, when they're born, they make the little yip, yip, yip. And it's very cute, right? And then they grow up and then they turn to these like 15-foot, 13-foot beast of an animal, and it kind of just scares you. However, they know that because they're cold-blooded animals, they know that they can't exert that much energy and survive like tussling with a human. So they tend to just stick to what they enjoy and what they can consume.
You have the cool calm of someone who like regularly dives with sharks and says like they're not going to be that interested in me, whereas the average person is like, how do you know there's not like the one who might be interested in you? I have to ask, just because students ask this all the time, is you're walking in these wild places that are beautiful and serene, but are also populated by panthers, bears, and gators. Do you take precautions? What do you do? I know that you know these animals very well, and you know that they're unlikely to bother you, and vice versa. But do you take precautions? Are you ever scared? What do you do sort of for your safety in these places?
So, number one, yes, I'm always scared. Number two, I never wear my AirPods or headphones in the swamp. My head is always on a swivel. And when I'm walking through the water in the rainy season, I usually have a stick that I bring with me to poke in front of me to make sure that, so if there's a gator sitting on the bottom, he'll get poked and he'll run away. So I'm always very aware of my surroundings, and I'm always scared. However, it's the difference between fear and faith. Fear says I'm scared. Faith says I'll do it anyway because this is what I do.
All right, I think we have one more bear photo. I love this. It's to me like, with no background knowledge of this photo, it looks like it's like stretching for the day. It's like just woke up, and I'm sure that's wrong. Maybe you can tell us what it's doing.
Oh, it's the same thing with the other bear family. This is a mom with her cub, and once again, she's teaching her cub how to look for a mate and identify the male bears that are in the area. So she's teaching her cub, this is how you find out who's in the area, what males are here. And that's one of the things where they get up off of all four and stand on two legs, and they start sniffing and scratching.
All right, we got a couple more minutes to go. I'm going to do one last call for our classrooms who are watching on YouTube today. I know you're there. I know you've got questions. Don't be shy. George is super friendly. He will answer just about any question you have today. So drop it in the chat. We'd be happy to fold it into our conversation. Please don't be shy. George, you have talked a little bit about like the culture of the Northern Everglades. I did not expect there to be cowboys and cowgirls, cow people. I don't know what the collective word for that is, but tell us a little bit about this photo and why this photo what this says about Northern Florida, Northern Everglades area.
So one of the things, what most people don't know is that the business of ranching in the United States was started in Florida when the Spanish came across. Back in the day, they brought their cattle, their horses. So ranching, having cows, was started in the state of Florida. It still continues. Florida has a history of over 500 years of ranching. So before the United States of America was a country, they had ranchers here, and it still continues to this day. And just like you, Tim, when I first got here, I didn't think cowboys were real, number one. And number two, I didn't know Florida had cowboys either. So it blew my mind. And there's a big, Florida's, if I'm not mistaken, it's in the top 10 or 13 meat producing states in the country. So a lot of other states will get their cattle from Florida and move them out there. So like Texas, Montana, California, places like that. So a lot of it starts here in Florida.
All right, great. Another thing many of us may not have known about Florida that we're learning from you today. The final photo I want to touch on is this one because I think it really captures like the awe and the beauty of wild spaces like the Everglades. Can you talk us through what we're looking at here?
So we're looking at the Milky Ways, which you're seeing in the sky, and the bottom right of the photo, that's Miami. So in the Everglades, when you go deeper into the Everglades, it's a completely dark sky. There's no light pollution. And this is me and my girlfriend at the time. She posed for this photo, and I spun like some fairy lights in the back. And that's the boat that we paddled in on. It took us about 3 hours to paddle from start to finish. And what you're seeing there is the Gulf of Mexico that we paddled into, that part of the Everglades. And yeah, it was just a great night to see the Milky Way, see all the stars out there. It's something that before moving to Florida, it's something I've only seen once in my life, and that was in New Zealand. So it's really cool to be able to drive a few hours, paddle, and sit under the stars and see the Milky Way on a really beautiful day with no moon, no light pollution. So it was a beautiful day.
You know, the space part of this photo, the stars and the Milky Way looks like something you might see from a photo from like the Hubble telescope or something very like NASA-y, but it's really, you know, the result of the right environment and good photography technique to capture that. Is all the light in the top left from the stars?
Yes, it's from the stars.
Extraordinary. Knowing how dark that space is, that you know the light is coming from space. Essentially, what a cool. How do you feel in spaces like this? Like you obviously love this. You love the Everglades. You will go to great lengths to capture beautiful photos like this. And lucky us, we get to see them and experience the awe that you experience. Why do you keep doing this? What sort of keeps bringing you back to places like this?
My curiosity, it's what drives 99.9% of my decisions to go into wild spaces, because my mind wouldn't let me just think it and be okay, fine, and move on. It forces me to deep dive and jump into these things and push myself to see what's really there, what it looks like at 1 a.m. and have that experience and be able to live it. And then I get lucky enough to be able to share it to these classrooms. I remember you did say there's some classrooms back home in New York City that are tuned in. So for a lot of kids that live in the city, the only sky that we get to see is the only star we get to see is the moon. So to be able to see this as somebody who grew up in New York, grew up in Brooklyn, is amazing. It's a beautiful thing.
Excellent. Well, I have to finish today. Our students are being very shy. I think they're just soaking it all up today. Beautiful photos can have that impact on people. I want to conclude by asking you what's next. Like, what's next for you? What are you interested in pursuing? Is there something in the Everglades that you haven't had a chance to get a photo of that you'd love to get a photo of, or are you looking at projects elsewhere?
For me, I want to photograph the 10,000 islands down in the Everglades. And then my next project is I'm going to be going out to Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons to do a book for National Geographic. So I'm super excited about the opportunity that's coming my way. based on me taking a risk and moving to Florida and following a dream.
Awesome. If we want to see all of your photos from now and for forever, how can we follow you? How can we look for your work, your future work?
The place where I update everything the most is definitely my Instagram, and that's at George McKenzie Jr. So it's my first name, last name, JR, all one word. And on my website, however, my Instagram is the one that I spend the most time keeping updated. And I promise those who don't have Instagram, I will update my website within the next month.
All right. Very cool. George, thank you so much for sharing your work, for sharing your inspiration, for your story, your explorer mindset with all of us. I'm going to put up the link to your Reach the World Journey homepage. For anybody who's watching and hasn't had a chance to read George's outstanding virtual exchange articles, you can find them there. Oop, went away. I'm going to bring it up one more time in case you didn't get it the first time. Make sure you check out his articles, some more photos there as well. This is going to be our last virtual exchange video call with George as part of this Expedition Everglades program. I want to thank all of you so much for joining us on this journey. If you have questions from today, but we're too shy to ask George himself, email me. I will be happy to pass them along to George for you. I know there's a lot to think about, especially when a place like the Everglades is so new to many of us. George, your work and story are so inspirational. Thank you so much again for joining. Educators, don't miss George's final articles. And if you are looking for your next virtual exchange expedition, also you can visit about.reachtheworld.org/explore. And you can choose from a number of upcoming live and on-demand virtual exchanges. So a lot of things to check out, a lot of things to explore. Hopefully programs like this are just the beginning of further investigations from our young viewers. But until then, stay curious, keep exploring. Thank you so much, George, and we will see you all next time.
Bye, Tim. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.